Roll call. Larry?
Here.
Ryan?
Here.
Ashley? Here. Jane?
Here.
Brent?
Here.
Jeannie?
Here.
Seth?
Here.
Dylan? All right. Notice of meeting.
The meeting was properly noticed.
Adoption of agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, can we stand and do the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We will start tonight with the Spotlight on Learning with Horizon. Pete?
Still working out the details. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
So I'm not only here to introduce our presentation. We're really excited to talk about our learning sprints and tier 1.5 intervention in the classroom. I'm also excited to introduce our team. Some of these people you see a lot. Lindsay seems like she's here all the time, but you probably haven't seen two of our fifth grade teachers in a while. So also tonight with us is Krista Miller and Megan Quick. As I mentioned, they're fifth grade teachers, but they're also guiding forces in our new push towards tiered intervention in the classroom. So when in our building is a dedicated block of time, it's 30 minutes of time. We ask our classroom teachers to provide additional support to students, usually in small groups, based on student needs. Those needs could be based on what the teachers had seen with the students recently, even in the class that day, and also on some assessment data. When's also a time when our interventionists take students from the classroom. Sometimes they do push in for tier 2 or tier 3 intervention. It allows the teachers, those intervention teachers, to remove the students from the classroom and not interfere with the students' access to the teachers or the curricular content during their grade level lessons and activities.
So Pete, just for those that might not know, WIN stands for what I need.
What I need, yeah. Now, over the years, it's taken on a couple of different meanings for us. What I need used to feel a little bit more like students deciding what they need. We've actually kind of taken that term back, and our teachers are now deciding based on data, based on assessment, based on what they see with students, what they need. So the folks behind me will talk a little bit more about that. I should maybe talk a little bit about the tiers of intervention. Tier 2 intervention is when students leave the classroom up to 3 times a week to be with our interventionists. Think of it like an additional dose of what maybe the students would get in the classroom. Tier 3 intervention is much more diagnostic, and it's based much more on specific needs for specific students. Many of the students who get tier 3 intervention participate in that 3 to 5 times a week. So to pull off what we're trying to do this year, we had to rewrite our master schedule. The WIN blocks needed to be separate so that interventionists were available for, all of the interventionists were available to an entire grade level at a time. This also allowed our teachers to start mixing kids between groups. It worked out really well with 4th and 5th grade, where there's one block of intervention time for both of the upstairs and downstairs. The needs in 3rd grade for intervention were a little higher, so we had to split that up so that the teachers had access to all the students they needed to see. So really the big changes for this year, we had the ability for our classroom teachers to use data to identify student groups, kids with similar needs, and then pull those students together for that half an hour of time. To make sure that our teachers were ready to do this, we embedded some training during our PD sessions. We also gave teachers time to review the data and create those groups. And once those groups were created, we had to find additional time during those PD activities so that our teachers could pick the appropriate interventions and plan for what they would do with the kids when they met those groups. And here comes Lindsay.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Lindsay.
Good evening. So just to kind of share the process that we went through during our professional development days. So this is an example of a class list, essentially. And what we wanted to do is kind of decide diagnostically who would benefit from our tier 1.5. So what we did is, this is our star data. So you can kind of see on the furthest right-hand side, those are our October percentiles, and we ranked them. And then what we did is we went through and we kind of looked at who are some students that are already receiving support in those areas. So this is reading specifically. So we kind of looked through and we looked at some students are receiving support due to an IEP goal that they might have, or some students are receiving support because they're already in a tier 3 intervention. But that left those students in white, as you can tell, that based on their data needed additional support in reading, but currently weren't receiving any support. So that kind of guided our decision making of who would benefit from these tier 1.5 groups. So it kind of just gives you a layout of the work that we did during PD days. So then the next slide shows once we had targeted that group and once we decided what students would benefit from those supports, our teachers met during the professional development days and we went through kind of what our planning would look like. So we identified the students, we identified what intervention would best suit them, and then we kind of went through a series of questions of who would instruct that intervention group, what would the other students be doing while that teacher was working with that group of students, the timeline of that group, which was all the same, and actually our first group ends this Friday. And then the last question we asked is how could this work be supported in the classroom? So obviously when it comes to intervention, we don't just want that to be their only support. We want to make sure they're getting additional support in the classroom as well. So we went through and did some additional planning together as groups and grade levels. So we have some wonderful 5th grade teachers here that are actually teaching the tier 1.5 intervention for 5th grade. So Krista is going to be speaking about what her work is looking like during the reading tier 1.5 intervention, and Megan's going to talk about what her math group looks like.
All right, I'm teaching 5th grade language arts and I'm doing a small group. I have 8 students that come to my room 4 times a week during WIN, and we've been doing a guided reading group, and we're focusing on fluency and comprehension. So one of the things that we noticed for these particular students was that their reading rate was sometimes a bit slower. And that really indicates that they're still struggling with some decoding. And so we've been working on fluency and decoding. And we do a little bit of phonics work, word work, really deconstructing some words, looking at patterns and thinking about other words that follow those same patterns and being able to recognize those words that they see in the books that we're reading. And we also think about speed, reading rate, making sure to really continue to kind of scoop up words and moving along as they read. We do some activities like the students will record themselves reading in Canvas and then listen back to themselves reading, and they go back and they count the number of words they read in a minute's worth of time to figure out their own reading rate. And then they can also listen and see, what am I noticing that I'm doing while I'm reading that I can work on? And they come up with strategies. They come up with their own strategies, and then we talk together about some strategies that they can use to increase their fluency, increase their reading rate. We want them to pick up their rate a little bit because they are going to need to do a lot of reading in middle school and high school. And if their reading rate is slow, then it is really hard for them to read the volume that they're going to encounter in the coming years. So that's something that we're working on. And then finally, we work on comprehension. We're reading books together so that we can discuss the books. They answer questions on their own. They answer questions together. We do little games every now and then just to really build their excitement, like we might do a online comprehension game just to get them excited. But all of these things together are, it's our hope to get them a little bit more excited about reading, get them to pay close attention, which is, I think, one of the biggest gains that we've seen is that these students are just, by nature of being targeted in a small group, they're starting to pay attention to their own reading skills a little bit more, and then hopefully that blends into all their other curricular classes, and they're just a little bit more ready to read wherever they need to.
Do you want to show the data after? Okay.
I took on the fifth grade math tier 1.5 group, and Lindsay and Pete asked a little bit to talk about what data we used as well. So we did look at our STAR data and the chart that Lindsay had talked about earlier with the students in white. We identified kids that maybe were not receiving intervention services, but also had things like speech or social skills groups that weren't available. So I looked at, or I should say our fifth grade team looked at data of students within the 25th through I think 39th percentile on their STAR test, and that I took 10 kids from that group. So we also met 4 days a week and decided to work on fractions. So at this point, when we started this 5 weeks ago, I think we had just begun our fifth grade fractions chapter, and a lot of the things we talk about in fifth grade math are assessed for mastery, like once initially, but then again for mastery later on. And fractions is one of those topics that is just assessed once. So it's something that the kids see a lot, and then they also have to go deeper with it in sixth grade. And so it would be really helpful for them to have a solid understanding in fifth grade. So we tackled fractions, and as well as that, primarily adding and subtracting fractions. We do also multiply and divide, but we just stuck with adding and subtracting for this first go around. So also embedded in that is multiplication fluency, knowing their basic multiplication facts that they can quickly recall, and a lot of fifth grade math is embedded in that understanding, whether it's finding a common denominator for fractions or multiplying or long division. So super important to also work on that stuff. So that was our focus. We met 4 days a week, and we also did similar things, a lot of practice in whiteboards. We started with our Bridges program, a baseline assessment, and from analyzing this baseline assessment, which is like a grades 3 through 5 kind of intervention program. So after they took this baseline assessment, we were really able to hone in on kind of the lacking skills that make up their fractions foundation, and that's where we started. And knowing the end of the trajectory for fifth grade, where we want them to be at the end of the unit, kind of made a path starting with finding equivalent fractions and using models to create equivalent fractions and using ratio tables to find a common denominator, and kind of filling in those holes so that they were able to be successful by the end on fifth grade material. So it went great. We're nearing the end. The kids didn't really know what to expect at the beginning, but we're sad that we're in our last week of it. The 6 weeks flew by. Their STAR scores increased greatly, super proud of them. They were also, of the 10 kids, 3 were in my 2 math classes. So I was able to obviously look at their fractions assessment, the unit assessment, not the weekly progress monitoring that they were due. But they were all proficient on the unit assessment for fractions, which felt like a huge win. As well as the data scores are super important, but a huge takeaway for me, and I think the other fifth grade teachers, is seeing their growth in confidence, which is just like for them to kind of know that they are math people, which they didn't think at the beginning of this, but their growth in confidence and their level of participation in the classroom has drastically increased. And when we're talking about things in class and their arms or their hands are raised and their eyes are just like as big as saucers, because you can tell it's a light bulb moment that they get it, and they want everyone to know that they get it, is I think just as important as seeing their scores increase as well. So for me, I would say our math 6 weeks together were a huge success.
So we wanted to share a few indicators of our success so far. So this is our reading. Our students took the STAR reading test a few weeks ago. So we took the average STAR score of the students that are taking part in the tier 1.5, and we averaged their scores prior to this group starting. And then we also took their average scores after the group began. So you can kind of see some of the growth that we're seeing. And obviously this isn't due just to the tier 1.5 group. We know that there's great things happening in the classroom, as Megan said too. But this is their reading. And then I want to share their math also. We only take our STAR math 3 times a year, but fifth grade ended up taking theirs last week to work towards some sixth grade placement, so we did have some math data to pull. So Megan's group that she was referring to, we're also seeing additional growth in their averages from 27.4 to 42.6. So some really great stuff we're seeing, and some really great successes. So we're going to continue this as we move in. Our next PD day is in January, so we'll continue the same practice of identifying our students, and then we'll go on to our round 2. So any questions for me or anyone else?
Could you go back to those performance slides, like on reading?
Sure.
What is a solid number there for a STAR assessment?
It really depends. We're looking for we're looking to get students above the 40th percentile. Obviously, anything above that, it goes all the way up to the 99th percentile, but our goal to kind of move past this tiered is kind of above the 40th percentile.
So these scores are in our percent.
So, okay, so
scores.
30 is the 30%.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Correct.
All right.
Yep,
Sorry,
yep,
thank
so
you.
like, yeah.
So you're hoping to get another 10 points.
We're hoping to get as much as we can. Yeah, and we saw some really awesome scores, as you can tell, from individual students, but just collectively as a group, they're really rocking
Same go
it.
for the math, 40% you're looking at?
Right, yep,
Okay.
so, yeah, so 50th percentile, you're considered on grade level. And so, yeah, typically we look at anything below the 20th percentile is going to get you identified for intervention services. And so, this is usually that group of kids, as you can see from their starting point, like right, just kind of cutting short of not being able to get intervention services, but clearly also not on grade level yet and stuff, so.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify a couple things? So you said 9 and 10 were the size of the groups that you had. Is that for 5th grade? That was the total identified, or are there other teachers working? Okay.
Just those,
That's the
yep.
total. Okay, great.
Correct.
And then you mentioned that it's a way to do things without them missing instruction time. So what are the other students doing during the WIN period?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That was part of our planning on PD days, is deciding what that looks like. It kind of looks different every grade level. 3rd grade kind of took it on to, we want to run other groups in our classrooms, so they're running multiple groups. 4th grade kind of split up where they have like Math Mondays and I don't remember what Tuesday is, Worldly Wednesday. So they kind of just pinpoint different activities that they could do, whether it's just reviewing like a Dreambox activity they need work on, or finish up some of their writing that they have to do. So every grade level is kind of tackling it how they want. But that's a big part of our PD day discussion, is if these groups are running, what are the rest of the students doing at that time? So it's kind of what fits. Some kids do move to other classrooms during that time. So like if Krista's running a group, the students that are in her homeroom might go to another classroom just to free up some room in her classroom, so it's a quieter setting. So really it's based on the kiddos that are in each class and what they need.
I love this concept. I mean, it truly is about not leaving any child behind and not letting anyone fall through the cracks. So I think it's great.
Of those kids that were identified, how many of them were already assigned an IEP versus maybe kids that in the last couple of years maybe developed subtle gaps and they were able to be found through this, and we're seeing a rise in scores?
So none of the students in our tier 1.5 groups have an IEP, have IEP goals dedicated to that subject area. So for example, the students that Megan or Krista work with, they don't have IEP goals dedicated to math or reading. So that was kind of the indication of we need to provide additional support for those students because they're not receiving any support outside of their classroom instruction. So it could be a combination of both. It could just be, COVID might have had a factor there. It could be, a skill that they just need an extra support with to really get them where they need to be. It's really individualized and independent on their needs, but that's kind of our goal with that small group, is they can really dig in a little bit more and then also collaborate with the classroom teacher if they're not the classroom teacher to really make sure we're hitting all those points home.
But Bren, you're exactly right. These are the kids that like have developed that subtle gap that, would have maybe otherwise been sort of missed in
They
the
were
big
able to
picture.
find it,
Mhm.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Maybe following up on a question that Stacy just asked. So with the number, like you have the number of students in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, how many, like, the numbers off the top?
It ranged from 7 to 10 was the max. So that was about the average size.
And then when did you actually do the before, and then the current?
I don't have the exact dates. The pre was our October testing window. I want to say it was mid-October, or the 2nd week of October was the window that they could test it. And then you might guys have to help me out. I'm pretty sure November was the same. It was the 2nd week or 3rd week of November is when they did the current scores. That was the most current
It was
star
about
data we
6
have.
weeks?
Yeah.
About 6
5
weeks?
weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
ish.
about 5 weeks
5 or 6 weeks of the,
of instruction
Interventions then,
happening.
okay.
Yep.
and how many, do you know how many sessions that would have been, or how much time they would have spent?
They do it 4 days a week.
Yeah, for 30 minutes, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, so.
So, it was and again, relatively speaking, are you like really pleased with these?
Very pleased. Yeah, very pleased. I know that the
for an
teachers are
additional
very excited
investment.
too
So
about their work.
12 hours of additional instruction, roughly. 12 hours, yeah, about of additional, give or take.
Can I question in this, Danielle, maybe it's a question for you. So the percentiles on STAR, are the percentiles constantly updating? So, like the 5, 6 weeks later, is that the percentile for that age group 5 or 6 weeks later, or is it what the year started? So it's adjusting.
Right.
So, I mean, if you understand how percentiles work, right, not only are they're not moving up on an old benchmark, they're moving up on an evolving benchmark, so they're jumping in their rank compared nationally to other students, so, that makes the number even more impressive. I mean, 27.4 to 42.6 in 5 or 6 weeks, that's a huge, they almost went to the middle, to the mean, darn near, to the mean in that time, so that's really great.
But then what you're asking though is, the next time you do this, the numbers keep going up though, right? I mean,
That's
it's not
right.
like they
Yep,
reach
that's
this
right.
level and it's like, whoa, great, wonderful news, but
Yep.
they will have to.
You have to
continue
keep growing,
Yep.
otherwise you'll fall back down, right?
And to that point, our groups would evolve too. So instead of working on fractions, their work might shift into another area that they need to focus on.
So how often do you do that assessment of who needs to be brought into these sessions?
So time is always a factor. So our PD day in January will be our dedicated time to look at our updated STAR deck, because we'll have math and reading updated assessments at that point. And again, we don't just use STAR. There's a lot of other assessments that we use to kind of make sure we're making the right decisions versus just one data point. But that'll be the next time where we create groups, decide what teachers are teaching those groups, decide what the other kids are doing, and then get started with the work. So that'll be our big next round. We'll start after that PD day in January.
This is kind of a crystal ball question, but do you anticipate the groups, the members staying somewhat consistent? Like they needed help in the fall?
Potentially not.
Okay.
Some of our students jumped really high, and we want to see if that trajectory continues on their next STAR assessment and other classroom assessments. Some students, we're seeing that this is exactly what they need. So it really, again, it'll be dependent on that. We did have some students exit the group. We had a third grade group that was, this is exactly what they needed. They're ready to move on. And so it was, like I said, we're really trying to be transparent of what the students need and also just make sure that they're getting back in the classroom ready to rock it. So, yeah.
This could be also be a place where a student who is currently receiving tier 2 or tier 3 interventions, right, with an interventionist, that this could be an opportunity for them to essentially step down back into the regular classroom, right? So instead of getting pulled out for that 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week, now they're going to get that, but they're going to get it during this dedicated time where they're not missing other core instruction or elective instruction. And
So
stuff.
maybe they would graduate out of like tier 2, tier 3
Exactly.
into this.
Yep, and stuff. So yeah, so just as kids often move up through the tiers, they can also move back down through the
Sure.
tiers. So this is an option for that. We don't know if
Absolutely.
that'll happen just yet or not, but
Yeah.
we're hopeful.
Yep. And we did have some students that did that. We did have some students that were ready to move out of tier 2, and this was a great place just to make sure that those skills were solidified, and again, great success. So
Come on, other questions. So how are the students and or parents informed of this progress or the success that they've had?
Parents are notified of their STAR assessments, but before we entered them into this group, we did notify parents that just based on the information we had, that we really think that they would benefit from a group like this, and parents were very excited about the extra support too. So that was really beneficial.
Jane, I think we saw
Yeah.
this when we did
Yeah,
our learning walk,
I
right?
saw this in action when I went on the learning walk, and it's really great for the students as well as the whole class is all doing something, and so it isn't taking away from any other students. And the teachers do a great job making it fun, and the kids loved it, and like I said, the classrooms were really well organized around this, so it's a great program that they have going
And the
on.
other thing I think that we want to mention is we also notice, when they get to be horizon age, upper elementary, they're really starting to notice that social implication. So also, like, if I'm the only kid that's leaving during our win time to go to intervention, sometimes that kind of points them out in one direction that maybe we don't want. So this also offered us an opportunity to say, a lot of kids are moving right now. Everybody's going where they need to go. So also just the social behavioral impact we're also noticing is also having a success for some of our students that are in the tier 2 or tier 3 interventions. It's supporting them as well. So.
Sounds good. Other than, can I have a little profile on Miss Megan Meyer or Megan Quick back there? Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how long you've been with the district or when you graduated.
I used to babysit for Larry's kids. We did catch up with my parents and his kids and all that stuff. So I feel like I've been here like a year before you, Pete, right? 12? Yeah. What are you? Because I'm one more than you. Then I'm 12. Always in 5th grade. I love 5th grade. So
And when did you graduate though again?
2001. 2001, yeah. So it's been a really long time when you're getting, when I'm getting like my class reunions and it's like, oh my God, it's been that long. So yeah, and then seeing Dylan and former students, it makes you just feel super, super old. My kids now go to school here, so it's like full circle moment, so yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for pointing that out, Larry. Anybody else have anything? All right.
Great job, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bob and Dylan, you want to do your student
Thanks for
report?
coming, have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, so here we have our December student report.
So our first topic of discussion is the PHS productions, which are run through the PHS Advanced Media Insight program here, led by Ms. Dirksey. And they do student-relevant topics from either school-specific content all the way to global news, stuff that's happening around the country, around the world. And they do this through 3 main media types, which are the Hook, which is a magazine-style publication. They do the Anchor Monthly, which is like a video news, almost like a podcast. Then they also do social media posts, which you can see on the bottom right of the screen. Most of that's through Instagram, I think. I see a lot of it on my Instagram.
And then for our second topic, we wanted to discuss a couple of events happening at PLE that we thought were important and special to highlight. So the first event that we wanted to highlight was an author visit that recently happened at PLE. So PLE students were visited by the author Deanne Nenis and Jaden Ellsworth, who is an illustrator of the book Living Life with Leo, which is a book about a child who's living with a disability and learning how to adapt to it and live a normal child's life with that. So this was something done in collaboration with the Serving Others Insight here at the high school, as the author was a childhood friend of Mrs. Buddy, who runs the Serving Others Insight program. So students were able to have a read aloud experience with the author and learn more about the book and its process of being created and the story behind it. And then they're also able to work with PHS students and create a craft associated with it. So it was a cool experience with collaboration between the high school and the elementary school, and a cool visit from an author with a book with a really great message. And then another cool event happening at PLE is the use of VR goggles. So I think this has been mentioned in past board meetings, but when talking to Mr. Siegel, this was one thing that he really thought was special or important to highlight to the board. And these VR goggles are being used by 1st and 2nd graders in their science classrooms in order to explore and discover different aspects of animals and habitats. So it's a new intuitive way for students to build up their research or research independently and have more excitement about topics. So we're able to build just a spark and an enjoyment for learning about these topics while also doing it in a meaningful way. And then we wanted to highlight athletics and activities as usual. So it's a longer slide this month with the start of the winter sports season. So boys basketball competed in Illinois, I believe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. It was their first game of the season, and they were victorious in their game against Normal Community High School in the Kevin Brown Tournament of Champions. And they're currently sitting at number 2 in the Division II coaches poll. Girls basketball also had a revenge game against Notre Dame for the state final last year, and they're also seating at number 2 in the Division II coaches poll. Wrestling competed in the Tom McGarvey Early Bird Scramble, and they had a 1st place finisher, a 2nd place finisher, and a 3rd place finisher at that invite. choir and band both had their, choir is having their winter concert upcoming this week, and band just had their past winter concert. And then another really cool project which was highlighted was with the robotics team. The robotics team is having their preseason planning and preseason meetings right now. And with that, they were able to complete a project with an elderly family in our community, in which they were able to find an old mobility scooter for an elderly individual in our community, and they were able to refurbish it and touch it up so that the individual could use it. So that was a really cool thing that I saw our robotics team doing for our community.
And then finally, we have our typical salutes and recognitions. So first of all, we did want to give a big shout out to the PHS robotics team, because that was obviously a really amazing deed that they did for a family that really needed something like that right now. Also a big shout out to Miss Thelma for becoming a published author. She just published her book recently. And then a shout out to Miss Dirksey, Kylie Clarkwist, and Sarah Jacobs for providing us with the information we received about PHS Productions. And then Mr. Siegel for giving us the information a little more in depth about the PLE VR goggles. That's all we've got.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Bob or Dylan? Nice job. Oh, you do?
You guys are doing a really good job, by the way, with this. This is nice summary, and hopefully finding out good things across the school district, so thank you.
Okay. Moving on to comments from citizens. Julie, I'm assuming? And then salutes and recognitions. Does anyone on the board have anything?
I have something. I just want to salute Asa Clark, Middle School, and Mr. Pizzo and Mrs. Spadoni, Ms. Stingle and Mr. Sevens for their 4 concerts in 2 nights. So they did a great job, and I think it's amazing that the 6th grade band, they did an informants, because the sounds that came out of my household then turned into music on the stage. So I don't know how she does that, but so I salute her because she puts up with that every day. So anyway, but I just thought that was so cool. 4 concerts in 2 nights. So I thought that was really neat.
a lot.
'Cause band and choir.
Anyone else? I wanted to give a salute to Christine Bauer for the work she did for the United Way Drive, and the work she just does. I mean, I know it's been wonderful that after COVID, now we're getting the volunteers back, and I know her plate's been full now. She's doing a great job. All right, do you guys have anything?
Yes. I have one for a student, and it was a picture in your presentation. So
Oh.
salute to Jacob Bruner, senior wrestler who earned his 100th varsity career victory on Thursday night at Nicolay. So Jacob's been a really good member of that program. So that's always a big milestone, and you saw everybody holding up their 100s.
I was a
in
little
that team
confused
picture.
until I saw the banner. I was like, 100 pounds? Like, what are we celebrating?
145
What
pounds.
I would celebrate.
But no, his 100th varsity
That's awesome.
career win. So
All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from our previous meetings. In November, we had the regular meeting, the business affairs, and then the December 5th learning session. We had some correspondence in our packet, and we did not have any gifts at this time. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of accepting the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Brian, can I turn it over to you for the business affairs?
Sounds good. We met earlier tonight and reviewed the check register. We had some questions answered. Nothing's outstanding there. Financial report looks pretty clean for this point of the year. We did talk about the budget and staffing calendar. I was trying to figure out if there's anything changed since the last time, but apparently not. Just maybe some dates. And we did spend a bunch of time on efficiency and effectiveness. Continues to be an ongoing war to limit the amount of energy we use and try to keep our costs down. And the big fight lately is trying to make sure that we don't set our peak demand that ends up costing us for the next 12 months. So the team has, John has a great tool in place, Clockworks, I think it's called. And it's really helping us trying to keep those costs down and be pretty effective manager of our facilities. We also talked a lot about busing as well, efficiencies there that we're picking up. Some of the route changes and reassignments might save us some money on our transportation costs as well. So, with that, I'd recommend approval or acceptance of the Business Affairs Report.
Second.
All in favor of accepting the business affairs report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to John. Safety drill log consideration.
You want me to give the background on the safety drill log? All right. So, off-school safety, back in 2018, they have a couple of state statutes and acts that they put in place regarding school violence drills being completed in schools, updating our emergency, or our crisis response plan, and then also performing safety training with our staff, and then also having site assessments performed. What you see in front of you is just a memo, which is the formal acceptance of the safety drills that have been completed for the last calendar year per what the off-school safety needs from a reporting standpoint. So.
I had one question, John.
Yep.
What does the question mean? Were any code words used during the drill?
So it used to be, there would be codes of like, code red, code blue, whatever, colors, or like, Charlie Brown, or, other code names are used. So there's no code, years ago we eliminated, I'm sorry, I can't remember what year we eliminated, but we just eliminated that code. So we try to use plain language whenever all possible for drills, just so, if you have a sub in the building, we have no idea what is the code, code blue in a hospital is different than what maybe a code blue would be in the school. So just trying to eliminate some of those, indecisive, or those words that people won't understand.
I noticed ASA's answered yes to that question. Were any
Okay,
code words used
so
during the
maybe
drill?
I'll have to check with the checkbox. So
Okay.
they might have accidentally clicked
Yeah,
on the wrong checkbox.
That's what I kind of figured. Okay.
Because we've switched it to Google Docs, so they're checking down, so they might have checked it a little too fast.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what our old code word was.
The old code
Something Clark?
was
Naomi
Naomi Clark.
Naomi Clark.
Report to the office. Was
And that
So
meant
this-
an intruder?
Yeah.
Yes.
we had that meant we needed a
Lockdown.
lockdown.
Yeah, that means
So
lockdown.
Naomi Clark, the
Asa's
daughter
wife.
of
I
Asa
remember the
Clark,
Clark
or
part.
Dace's
It would
wife.
seem like a
Was
good
Asa's
system, but good point about the subs. They're gonna be like, who's Naomi?
Who's
Naomi?
Naomi?
I don't care, she's in the building.
Apparently she should go to the office.
Well, I'll read this. To accept for the purposes of board review at this meeting, the written drill evaluation submitted by the principals under section 118.07, paren 4, paren CP of the state statutes from Pewaukee Lake Elementary, Horizon Elementary, Asa Clark Middle School, and Pewaukee High School as listed.
Second.
All in favor of said proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Who's up next?
Oh, John.
Just getting warmed up.
Olivia, no.
Oh.
Actually, well, I mentioned it. So Olivia Gill is our new custodial operations supervisor.
Hi, Olivia.
Now I have to say something. I came up here. No, hi, I'm very excited to take the position. I've been here for 4 years. And I started out part-time grounds, loved it, got the full-time position, loved it even more. And then when Sean said he was leaving, I was like very, very interested in moving up and learning all about our operations that we do here. So I'm excited to hit the ground running. Everybody has been very, very supportive here too. It's been overwhelming. So I think I've made a good decision and I'm very excited to work with you guys. So
That's wonderful.
thank you.
Congratulations.
And she gets to be inside now, too.
Yes.
What's that?
She gets to be inside now sometimes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Good.
So,
Timing.
want me to jump right into it, or
Yep.
John, do you want to talk a little bit about funding at all, or
Sure.
to set the stage?
Each year at this point of the year, we want to have the board familiar with where we're at with the long-range capital projects and what's on the horizon for the district. As we look at that, as we look at our long-range capital projects, this is more from originally a long-term plan and a long-range capital plan. So the capital were those small projects that generally would be included in the budget and addressed along the way. The long-term were building additions, building expansions, new facilities, things like bigger ticket items that generally would have been funded through a referendum to be able to afford them and spread that cost over a number of years. So as the district stands right now, in 2013, we combined those two plans into a single plan when we created the Fund 46, the Long-Term Capital Projects Trust Fund within the district. We have two funds where we accumulate resources to use to address items in this long-range capital projects plan or to address emergencies as they come up throughout the year. That's Fund 41, the Long-Term Capital Improvement Plan, or Improvement Fund, and then I mentioned the Fund 46, the Capital Projects Trust Fund. Combined, we have just short of $2 million that we're projecting at the end of this fiscal year we will have in reserve for those funds. Like I said, these projects, the reason we do this in December is because we begin the budget development process in January, February, or March, and we'll identify in that budget process what are those next things that are going to be funded. This plan is not intended to be this is what we're doing next year in capital projects. This is what's on the horizon. So some of these may be accelerated based on how long we're able to make them last. For example, I'm going to steal some of John's thunder here. The roofing plan. A roof will be 20 to 25 years. We want to make sure we identify when is that roof going to be expected to be replaced, because that's a big capital expenditure that we're going to have to make. We can, through preventative maintenance, through routine upkeep, through inspections, extend the life on that roof 3, 4, 5 years beyond what's expected. And that's what we try to do continuously with all the items that are in here. So we try not to put a specific date on here, nor does the date mean that's the year it's going to be done. It means based on the lifetime expectancy of those units or those big ticket items, this is about the point in time where we're going to have to address something. We may be able to extend it, it might come quicker. So that's the way the plan is designed, to give you that picture without saying these are the stops on the bus. But this is the route that we anticipated taking.
And then we also, just to, kind of set the stage for you as well with, their criteria. So S is safety and security, L is life cycle and operations, A is aesthetics, P is program delivery, and E is efficiency. Sometimes some of the projects combine to make both of those. And also you'll see some color coding. Green, if you want to keep going, Julie, next page. Green is likely to happen within the next 1 to 3 years, blue within the next 4 to 6, purple 7 to 10, and if you see it in yellow, it wasn't on the plan last year, it's been added this year. So like John said, yes, this is a fluid document, so some things go on, some things slide up, some slide down, based upon, maintenance or preventative maintenance. All right, we try to extend the life cycle of as many of these pieces as we can. And then as we get towards, you can go all the way down to the high school, Julie. So I'm just going to kind of jump right into it. The biggest thing right now, what we're seeing is lead time insanity. And you talk about electrical components right now, you want a transformer, it's 80 weeks. You want an HVAC rooftop unit, we're talking 50, 52 weeks easily. So it's interesting, even 2 months ago, I'm talking with some colleagues, and they're like, oh, well, good luck getting anything done in the summer of 23. So, already those projects are already pushed to the summer of 24, if anybody wants to complete any of those projects. And I fear some of those people that pass referendums, good luck with those lead times for some of those electrical components, because they're just going to be waiting.
John,
So-
what were they historically?
You could get a rooftop unit 8 to 10 weeks tops. I mean, and even during the pandemic, it was maybe pushing 20 weeks. The rooftop unit or the air handling unit we put in at PLE last summer, that ended up being 24 weeks. We ordered it early November, and we received it right around July 1st-ish, right around July 1st.
Highly custom air handler would have been 16 weeks about 3 years ago, and now it's like 52 weeks, like you're saying.
Yeah, and it's mostly electrical and HVAC. Some of the roofing materials, it was 4 to 6 months last summer, now it's down to 2 to 3 months. So there's some bubbles that are still pushing themselves out of the market, but also you just have to be realistic when you're, utilizing some of these items. So just, a lot of it's just gonna be, again, we brought this up the last time, it's just gonna be advanced planning. Same thing with the softball field with the turf. We need to bid that out far in advance so we can get on the schedule for next summer. If we waited till March, or something where you would have normally waited until, you just can't do that anymore. So some of those are just, lead times are really, an issue, in the market right now. What you see from the high school standpoint is we did a lot of kitchen stuff, as you're aware. Next summer, we're looking at adding a drain to the newer hood that we put in, and then also redoing that kitchen floor. So really, we're just starting at top, kind of working our way down, and then hopefully we get everything situated where we need to be, and then adding epoxy floor to the high school kitchen. So that's one big thing you see. We also have a few doors that are just rotting. I mean, it's metal. They're hollow metal doors, and they're starting to rot. So like special light doors right now are 10 to 12 weeks, where normally it might have been 3 to 4, 4 to 6. Now they're 10 to 12 weeks. So some of these things is just, advance, it's preparing and planning. Really, that's what it comes down to. As you see, there's other items, regarding tech ed, face classroom, what do we do with that? Also, what are we doing, in the future? What areas of our buildings haven't been touched with the, recent referendums? Majority of our buildings have all been touched. I mean, a lot of great energy improvements, and, even what we heard from C.G. Schmidt and our architects during the last referendum process was how few items are on our long-term capital projects plan because we're not deferring maintenance. So we're taking care of those items in a timely manner, and also just, we were able to take care of a lot of items within the recent, construction project to, minimize the amount of items you see on these lists. So that's what you'll see there.
John, can I
yes.
ask a question?
Yeah.
The locker fronts,
So,
how is that an efficiency thing?
5 years ago, we ended up replacing a lot of the, so there's a lot of these recessed lockers right here where the padlocks, or the locks used to be recessed inside. We had a tremendous amount of issue with that, and we had work order issues, and we're spending a lot more time on these lockers being jammed and having issues and malfunctioning for kids that we switch a lot of them over to padlocks. There is about actually not 207, I think it's down to like 193. There's 193 lockers in the 100 hallway and the 200 hallway that still you need the entire locker front replaced in order to put a padlock on there. You can't just take off the recess lock. So those are just the lockers that didn't get done the last time, but we addressed the major issue we had 5 or 6 years ago with some of these, the built-in locks that we're having issues with. So we switched a lot of those over to
People
padlocks.
efficiency, not power, yeah.
Yeah,
You
well,
would have
yeah.
seen it on our
Yep.
work order logs where there was a spike right in the center of it, and it was a number of hours of custodial time on
Yeah.
unjamming, unbending, fixing lockers, opening lockers.
I think I had it compiled down to 2 full-time custodians, 80 hours a year each, spending just on locker calls, jams, you name it. So it was like our third highest craft item with our work orders. Like one was HVAC, but majority of those preventive maintenance. And then we had electrical. Well, most of all our electrical ones were taken care of because we had LED lighting. And then the kicker was, it was like, one of those efficiency pieces where like, what's going on with your lockers? And I'm like, all right, I want you guys to enter every single work order, how much time you're spending, because I want to know. And I'm like, all right, we were able to equate that to that amount. I'm like, okay, we got to do something about this. So that's what the locker fronts is.
Thank you.
Any other questions, high school?
I do.
Yeah.
You have replacements for lights cameras, or is that?
So security camera replacements, that was added on there. So we have a few analog cameras. Well, and part of it's just to upgrade some of these because some of these are just going to start going. A lot of our cameras, there's some that we have throughout the building that are going back to 2012, 2013, 2014.
So end of life type situation there for some cameras?
Yeah, some are life cycle, and then, all right, some of them are efficiency too. Where before, all right, I needed 2 or 3 cameras to cover that hallway, where now I can put one up and I can get a better range of view, and it's just, a lot of efficiency, but more life cycle than anything else.
Okay.
All right, any other questions of the high school? All right, we'll jump to middle school. One big thing that we've seen here recently is the Inflation Reduction Act. So there is a tremendous amount of opportunity that we have from a solar standpoint. Originally, we thought there was a limit on 389 kilowatt systems. Now there is not a limit on what size capacity you can do for a solar system. The kicker with the Inflation Reduction Act is, though, we can easily offset, floor is 30% of our costs for adding, and it could be up as much as 60% possibly with some of the Inflation Reduction Act opportunities that are out there within over the next few years. So it's gonna be something we're gonna be exploring. And also, whether we're charging a battery or whatever it may be, there's some other opportunities out there where we can try and offset some of those peak demand charges by adding a solar array, whatever it may be. And then also you look at, we have over 1.5 million of roofs that are gonna be coming up over the next 5 years that we're gonna need to address. And then it also offers a great opportunity for us to possibly add solar on some of those roofs that we replace right away. So it's advantageous for us to do that, soon after there is a newer roof than, putting it on towards the end of its life cycle. So otherwise you have to remove all the panels and replace the roof and, and then same thing, security cameras. There's just a couple of, I wouldn't say blind spots, just a couple opportunities where it's like, all right, we can add even more to just have more efficiency throughout the building there at Asa Clark. But the biggest thing for the solar is, yes, we have it on Asa Clark, but I look at, there's a lot of opportunity district-wide to be adding solar in the near future. And the key is there's gonna be funding there for it. That's the best part about it.
So John, even though it's not color-coded, you are planning on doing it as it becomes feasible?
Yes, yes. And the key is we're seeing those lives, with the paybacks. The paybacks, were 11 to 13. Now we're seeing paybacks as low as like 7 to 9 years. And I mean, that's pretty reasonable when you're talking about paybacks from a solar standpoint. And just offsetting the costs. I mean, I look at, again, we're talking about rising energy costs. All right, there was the rumor it was going to be up to a 12% increase in electricity costs next year. Now it's dropped down to about 6% from what we're hearing. But again, our usage keeps going down, but our costs have not. So the rates just keep going up. I mean, I haven't heard of the rates ever decreasing since my time here. So, I mean, they're just going to keep going up, but we're going to continue to use less energy, but we're going to be paying the same amount. So we're just, again, with that solar, I look at anything being able to offset, even a couple other schools that have added in the recent, they're seeing anywhere from 17 to 20% less usage because they're able to offset it with solar opportunities. So it's there, and we're going to continue to explore. I've already got a couple of solar companies looking at some options with batteries and getting actually all 4 buildings priced out just to have an idea of what it would cost. If, let's say we're a megawatt district or something like that, you never know. So I'm just saying there's opportunity there. So we're going to continue to explore options. Any other questions, Asa? Horizon, you'll see a couple additions on Horizon, just a couple of miscellaneous things we need to address and take care of. Also just, trying to, brand and bring some of those items up to speed. Eventually we're gonna have to do some of the flooring. That's just coming up on life cycle. Again, this VCT tile, you're gonna have 25 years roughly, and well, we're coming up to that pretty quick before you know it. So anyway, that's something we'll have to look at. Again, like the older gym floor, that'll have to get sanded down, repainted, refinished in the near future too. But again, part of this is to have it on there so there's not really any surprises. So I want to try and avoid coming to you guys with like, oh, we got to, spend X amount of money on this project and, oh, it wasn't on there. So the goal of this is just try to have it on there and address them as they come up. Any other questions for Horizon? PLE, you'll see the gym floor, trying to squeeze that in this next summer. Just like we sanded down, repainted, and refinished the main gym floor, we're gonna do something similar at PLE too. The PD the Parrot's still on the floor there at PLE, and I know it's been at least 14, 15 years since that one's probably been sanded down. They usually say 8 to 10 years roughly is what your ideal for a heavy usage court. Like say our main gym, that was 10 years. It was 9, 10 years, we sanded down, repainted, refinished. So it's based upon usage as well, not just years. Years and usage determines when you should really do that type of stuff to the gym floor.
Does PLE last longer because they don't weigh as much?
Yes, but there's a lot of little feet rolling around there, so. And there's, there's a lot of kids in that gym on a regular basis, so. But, you know, yes, that's the other thing is our gyms are used all the time. So, I mean, we have a max amount of usage in all of our gyms on a regular basis, and it's not just PE. It's not, so there's a lot of other groups that are using all of our gyms, so. But yeah, facility usage is key. And then you see a lot of those roofs from the 96 edition, which is pretty much that front face, rolling around the whole east side near the playground and rolling around by the gym. That's all those roof sections that you'll see on a future spreadsheet coming up here on the next slide. Any other questions PLE related?
Is the playground one of the items that's on the PTO's?
Yes. So there is the sections. The large section that is closest to Circle Drive is the one we're looking at replacing next summer, and yes, PTO is assisting in that in a substantial amount. So we're still working out details on how much they're gonna pay, we're gonna pay, or, any combination of that. But yeah, that one's, it's getting at the end of its life cycle, so I think it was 2002. Yeah, I think it was 2002, or no, it was sorry, I don't have the year right offhand. I have it on my desk, but that one's well at its life cycle. It's had great years of play. It's just it's on its last leg. So, but yeah, that's for the playground. Any other questions for PLE? And then next slide is just talking about the grounds. So obviously softball turf, that's out to bid right now. So we're expecting bids back on Thursday for that. And that includes the fencing and everything else regarding the softball turf field behind the middle school. There's some of those other opportunities that, hey, we'll have to look at in the near future. Like just the asphalt lot behind PLE. That was one of the only areas we haven't re-asphalted in the last, while. I mean, so that's probably the only area that really hasn't. And again, some of those other items are just on there as, hey, our stadium turf is at 9 years, so that's, we're probably going to get 13, 14 years hopefully out of that. So that's just on there kind of as a placeholder because it'll need to get replaced eventually. And then, a couple of those other ones is just, even the message center sign. There's some opportunity there where, all right, it could be larger, more options, more color options that Miranda can play around with and continue. So there's opportunity there. So we'll continue to explore that and look at that. The large graph on the bottom there you'll see is the roofing plan. And again, like I said, there's a lot of roofing life cycles that they're just coming up. So again, Horizon being a ballasted roof, we're just coming up on 20 on that. So those are, going to need to happen sooner than later. And then, like I said, those ones at PLE. So that's what it's in the future, but we're going to need to have money allocated towards completing those projects right towards the end of their life cycle. So the goal is to replace them right before the end of their life cycle, so we're not having to do a whole lot of repairs and fixes at the end of the life cycle. And then we have 80, because there's a 15A and there's a 15B for whatever reason at PLE. So technically we have 80 roof sections that we maintain on campus. So, questions regarding the plan?
I have a couple of them.
Yep.
One, you talked about it earlier, with that timeline to be able to get some of the parts for the transformers or HVAC kind of.
Yep.
Is that reflected in any of the timelines that you have put into your calendar or schedule? Again, I'm making assumptions that maybe it doesn't change in the next.
It really doesn't change much because we're really not going to do much HVAC this particular summer. Is there some that we might look at possibly doing 24? Yes. And then I think that would be something we need to, look at late spring for the following year.
I mean, if that timeline is still out there, then what you're telling me is it's like we need to start thinking about putting that out for bid for the summer of 2024, right?
Yeah. If we decide to do it in 24, yes.
Do we have any feeling about that, Brian? Do you expect it to improve?
I
I don't expect it to improve.
Not anytime
I-
soon.
This is the longest, supply chain issue that I've ever experienced in the HVAC industry in my entire career. So usually they get over with by 18 months. This is going on about 3 years or more, and it's not getting any better. It's just not. So
It does the same thing about the transformer industry.
I told somebody I had 30-week lead time on my equipment. They almost hugged me. And I'm
Oh.
like, 30 weeks I thought was terrible, but 52 weeks is out there right now.
Yeah, when I know WCTC, they're waiting on a transformer, and they're like, yeah, we're only 59 weeks out, so, they were told 80 originally when they ordered it, and they're like, yeah, we're at 59 weeks. I'm like, phew.
Just simple fans, they're out 52 weeks, so it's tough.
I'm just glad we're not doing a lot of building right at this time, but I also look at, the way inflation has adjusted that market, a lot of those referendums, good luck getting them done for the prices they sent out the question for. And even our project, I look at today, a $39.7 million referendum, whew, I mean, it's probably at least 55 million right now if we were to complete, do that in today's dollars.
And there's some statute requirements about getting the money spent, and they could definitely go up to that wall, trying to get these projects done for these referendums, just because of the long lead times.
Any other questions? So again, this is just kind of an annual report and annual update for you, and again, is just trying to look at the advancement like you're talking about, like, all right, if we look at doing something, yeah, there's opportunity, just like we came forward with the softball of like, hey, we can't wait until after this meeting to start with that whole softball piece. So that's why we have to get the ball rolling whenever the bidding period is, or the time schedule would be for possibly ordering something.
And no pun intended there, right?
Yep, no pun
And
intended.
this is a really good, long-standing system we have in place. We talk about issues like lead times. It's good to be planned way ahead and know what's in front of you as you kind of identify these things, so that there aren't surprises. It's out there. The community can see this. They can see things that are on the list. We've had some conversations about, do we do some engagement with community, maybe even this spring, to talk about some next steps with addressing some of the facility pieces that are out there that we might want to move forward on. So it's great to have this plan in place before to engage in some of those conversations and get some feedback. So good job, John.
Thank you.
Good job. I
Thank you very
appreciate how thorough
Thank
it
you.
is and your connections that you're maintaining to stay on top of that industry stuff.
Yeah, it's
One other question,
exciting.
it's back to the roof kind of stuff that's out there and the linkages with that. I know we had a student group come in and talk, or a couple of students come in and talk about the solar. I mean, the synchronization of that, is how difficult or challenging is that gonna be? And then maybe just for information purposes, what happens if we delay or postpone any of that roof repair, replacement kinds of things? Give us the scoop on that.
Well, so some of the roof systems, let's start with that. Well, let's start with that one first. So regarding if we were to wait, well, then we might be caught, hey, I wouldn't say some could collapse, but some of those roofing systems will start to fail, and we're gonna end up spending more money in repairs than it's worth. You get to that 50% mark of like, hey, all right, yep, this one needs a repair. Well, it's gonna be $40,000. Okay, well, why are we gonna put a $40,000 repair into this roof when really we should just, replace it? So I look at the biggest thing is, that's the manufacturer's recommendations, also architects' recommendations of like, this is what the life cycle is of these particular roof types, and we should pretty much hold to it. Yes, there's some of those roof systems we can extend the life cycle a little bit, but I wouldn't push too far past there, because otherwise we're gonna have big issues, and they happen fast and they come fast, and we just don't wanna be in that boat. Going back to the solar and the synchronization of solar and roofing, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity right now, so depending upon what's available or funding available at the high school, middle school, that can be done really anytime. And like say, even when they install solar, they'll almost do it pretty much year round, aside from a couple of the hard winter months when there's a lot of snow sitting. But I mean, realistically, they could do that when school's in session with little interruption too. And then, you know, for elementaries, obviously we would just wait till after we do those roof sections to do anything at those buildings. But right now, there's opportunity at the high school, middle school. It's just a matter of, you know, there being funding mechanisms in order to support that and offset those costs. And to have a solid payback.
All right.
Great.
Thank you, John,
Thank you.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate your time and work. Okay. Other John.
So, one of the items came out of the, board survey was some, questions about where we're at with transportation and what the plan, or what are some of the activities that we've had from the district's perspective in working to get through some of the challenges that we're facing. We have worked really closely with Rightway. I gave you a memo that outlined some of the details of some of the things that we've accomplished this year. Just to highlight a few of them, the board did agree to extend the agreement back in September with Rightway. Part of that was to address some of the inflationary costs and the impacts of being able to recruit and retain drivers in the system. And that's really been the core of a lot of the challenges that we've faced, is the number of drivers that we have available. And really the focal point, increasing wages for those drivers, creating additional full-time positions for those drivers. And Rightway has worked really hard to maintain that fleet. Again, this is across the entire industry. When we talk to other districts, they're experiencing a lot of the same things, especially in our area here in Waukesha County. There's not a huge number of people that are getting their CDL to drive bus as a part-time position. And the recruitment is really slow for those positions. So we've worked really hard to look at how can we become more efficient with our routing and with the ridership that we have on our buses to see if we have the ability to impact that shortage. In September, we had about 18 times where we had a route that wasn't filled in the month, either AM or PM. We had the same thing in October. In November, we had about 6 in the first 4 days of the month. Since then, we've only had 2 days where we didn't have a route filled. And since November 14th, we have not had a route that has gone unfilled. November 29th was a big day. We implemented a routing change in the fleet that we're using. We went from 19 regular buses to 16 by consolidating routes, focusing on actual ridership more than focusing on assigned riders. Because you assign to every student who's 2 miles or more from school, and anybody who's early or 4K through 5th grade, regardless of distance to school, is assigned a route. So by focusing on that ridership, we were able to get the ridership balanced across all of the different routes. So we didn't have secondary level, the goal to have no more than two per seat, or 54 regular riders per route. And at the elementary level, the capacities are 72. We try to balance all the routes in that 65, 66 range maximum on there. Some may go up to the full ridership. But through those efforts, we've been able to reduce this and also improve the efficiency of those routes, where by removing 2 or 3 houses from one route and putting them to a different one that's in proximity to it, we're able to shorten the run times of those routes. For the last week and a half, we've had so give you an idea, at the end of the day, our principals who are here are all on the chain. We get a notification from the bus company when the last driver drops off their last student. They drive a couple of blocks, they stop, they do their vehicle check, and then they radio in that they're all clear. And that all clear has been coming in at 4:35 to 4:37 since the consolidation, which is exactly where we've operated for the last 15 years. So operations seem to be back now to where we were post that consolidation. And continue to look at efficiencies, where we have the opportunities to tweak these routes a little bit more. Wisconsin Avenue being completed and having access to that, and the roads that come up to the campus was a huge bonus. We shaved 3 to 4 minutes. 3 to 4 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, but when you shave that off of the route and getting buses back here on time to take students home, it's a big deal. And then the east side of the district, the work that's being done over there on DePlainville is close or completed, I believe, opened up again, which makes a much more direct route for our buses. And I believe there's 3 buses that go over that way, 3 different routes yet that serve that area of town. So that's been very helpful. Any questions?
John, I'll tell you, I volunteer at Horizon handing out breakfasts. In the last couple of weeks, all of the buses have been on time. And before that, we were getting 3 to 4 buses that were 15, 20 minutes late. That's a long time when you're trying to start your classroom going in the morning.
Give you an idea of how some of that cascades. A couple of the instances, so a few of our regular drivers come from Pewaukee and they drive from our terminal. But we've had it happen a couple of times where that driver gets contacted by their student that their child's route was canceled because of a call in and they had to get home to get their kids to school.
So John, I mean, obviously, this was a kind of a highly controversial issue out there, different neighborhoods, different situations, and Jane and I both live in the Victoria Station to Plainville, which was horrible as a resident there. I mean, it was really one road in and out. But I believe now the bridge is open, the roads are open there. But coming back around to when you talked about the on-time arrivals and then at the end of the day, when they conclude, do you have any sense of, was there 1 or 2 factors that really kind of drove that, or what really made the difference? And then talk a little bit about the working relationship with Rightway to address the issues that were identified.
Rightway has been very proactive, and I'll tell you, the consolidation was the biggest success of that so far, and stepping away from that, what is the optimal, determining what is the optimal number of routes that we can function with. Routinely, it was 1 or 2 buses that would not have that driver because of the shortage and not have a sub available for it. By reducing 3 routes, we were eliminating that shortage that was inherent. It was as part of the operation, it was unfillable at points in time. So by being able to reduce the number of routes, we're able to eliminate that shortage and get the dispatcher back in the terminal instead of driving buses. By being able to do that, now you get the flywheel moving of improvement because you've got somebody there who's in the operation, not out driving a bus, not trying to get 8 hours of work done in 2 hours after you get off the bus at night. It really improved the efficiency of it, and Rightway has done a really nice job of providing supplemental staffing to the terminal to be able to bridge that gap. We've also sent the joint postcard home with them. They're picking up half the cost of that as a recruitment effort, and I know there's been at least 1 person already has come down to the terminal and said, "Hey, I got this postcard. I'm interested in this. What does it mean?" So.
Good.
Thanks.
Do you know when that, the GPS app will be available?
Right, one of the other measures, so early on, we talked about the most effective way to work through the whole shortage in that is gonna be communication and good communication, and how can we facilitate that? And congratulate Mike for picking up where I did not pick up on that piece of it, and running the communication chain with that. An element that we can improve that even further is to provide an app. It's called Here Comes the Bus, where parents can subscribe to this app and be able to identify, oh, my child's bus on this road is 5 minutes away. So they know when the student should go out and when the bus can be expected. There's also an alert system that's built in there. So bus 6 has a mechanical issue, and they have to get a new bus out there to take it. It's gonna bring everything 10 minutes late. It can send an alert to every rider who's on that route moving forward that the bus is gonna be 10 minutes later than expected. So there's some customization in there. We anticipate having that early in the 2nd semester, so early to mid-February. Again, lead times on supply chain, getting the equipment, and then getting it installed and releasing and training that information.
I think it was something I saw in one of the school magazines or things related to funding being available for electric buses. What's your prediction on that? And obviously we didn't get one, or the Rightway didn't get one, right?
I had a brief conversation with Right Way on that, once the funding was made available. The cost really right now of the electric buses, we haven't gone through and done the full analysis of what the operating cost is. It's the acquisition cost that's right now that is really makes it prohibitive from, moving forward with it. What we have to analyze further is take the acquisition cost, what is the infrastructure cost to be able to build out, to be able to charge and to keep those things operating, on top of, and compare that to the fuel savings that you would have and see where that shakes out, as we look forward. They're in use around the state. Different places have received them or have gotten them, through those grant opportunities. But right now, it's not something we're pursuing.
I just want to acknowledge John. I mean, it's been a challenge. It's probably been one of our biggest irritants and challenges, and parents have had to, and I give parents credit. They've been really incredibly patient considering. We've had some people who were unhappy, and I get it. It's been frustrating. You've had routes canceled, and it's been, you couldn't rely necessarily on what time your kid was going to get picked up or be home, and the principals, were dealing with calls and communications on a daily basis, and so John's really worked very hard on a multiple times a day on the phone with Right Way, trying to figure out communication and getting routes covered and those things. Then you throw the road construction on top of it. So kind of the perfect storm for a challenging situation with bus transportation. It's going much better. The other piece that I think was mentioned, since the new terminal manager is in place, so, again, continuing to push Right Way to help address some of these issues. They took a very experienced individual in the company and have her, and she's filling in until they hire a permanent replacement. She's been fantastic. I don't think we've had a route not covered since she's been here. And
Terminal manager?
the terminal manager.
Permanent?
No, she started mid-November. She's kind of the interim person. This is what they do. They have her kind of go and fix the situation, and then they get out and they hire the permanent person. But Kathleen's, we met with her and we knew right away we were in pretty good hands. You could tell she knew what she was doing. So she's been, I think, everything from student drivers with dealing with student behavior on buses to just everything running better, the communication being better. That was a significant piece, in addition to the route consolidation. We really thought long and hard about it because, the concern is, do you get a little overcrowded or those things on the buses? We're not overcrowded. There's some very full buses. The other thing to keep in mind is if you hear about that, they're usually not very full for long because the fullest buses, within probably 5 minutes, a whole bunch of kids are already off that bus. So it's worked really well since it's been implemented, and John's the one that deserves, the credit for the improvements that have been made. So.
Thank you. Okay, Mike, calendar.
I think it's been 5-6 years now. We've been approving calendars 2 years out at a time, which was always very well received. It's a very typical calendar. I gave you the information in the memorandum, all the things that have to get factored into it. The administrative team and staff have had an opportunity to weigh in. The whole staff has actually had this draft for more than a week with an opportunity to email back if they have any questions or concerns. I've received none since I pushed it out to the full staff. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. We did not do a specific parental feedback on this one. We have in the past, and generally the message we've received is, we just really want, we want to know when these dates are, and we like that it's 2 years out ahead of time so we can plan. But a lot of the schedule, or a lot of the calendar is pretty predetermined based on some of the things that I outlined for you that must be included. But I'd be happy to take any questions you have. Otherwise, I'd seek your approval.
Move to approve the calendar.
Second?
All right, motion and seconded. All in favor of approving the 2024-25 school calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to personnel issues.
No resignations, no employments, no leaves.
Easy peasy. Okay, board goals and operations. The, Julie, I like how you added that into the outline. So, obviously, this is our only meeting in the month of December. Our next meeting in January on the 9th will be 6 PM Business Affairs, 7 PM regular board meeting. Wednesday, January 18th. Oh, that's the WASB. The time has changed for our post-secondary presentation. That one's you, Brian, right?
No, I think it's the other way around.
Was that one me?
Yeah.
And you're the grad profile?
Yeah, because
Got it.
delegate meets then.
Oh, okay. All right. And then Monday, January 30th, we have that learning session with Melissa and Candace at 6 PM. And will that be here, Julie? Will it be here or in the
We've done it in the library in the past. Is that where we're scheduled?
library? Okay. All right. And then we've got our 2 regular meetings in February. Any questions on the upcoming events? All right. Legislative advocacy.
Not a whole lot new to report. We did meet with Adam Nalen, Stacy, and John and Danielle and I. That was a good meeting to talk to him about and get his perception on where things are and just to kind of, make sure he was aware of some of the topics that were of concern to us. The big issue, of course, is what's going to happen with the budget surplus and the next biennium budget. And that is going to obviously get to be a real active discussion once we get into January, February, March. The governor had a press release February 15th, right, John? Where his budget proposal is coming out. So that's kind of the next piece as they get into the new year and there's a lot of turnover in the legislature with a lot of new members. So right now I think the parties are just kind of organizing themselves and those kinds of things. So great to meet with Representative Nalen. He's always been very responsive. We did hear back from Senator Kappinga's office and a commitment to meet with us. Not a date yet, but sometime once the session gets started, February, March, somewhere like that.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Election candidate report. So Julie gave us all the pertinent dates. Does anybody have any questions or comments? The process coming up? All right. Moving on to the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, the resolution review and discussion. Brian, thank you for being a representative on that.
You're welcome.
Started to read through, that's quite a pile.
And I was expecting, in fact, I contacted Julie. Usually about this time I would have got the hard copy book, but I guess they're still working on it. I thought maybe they just didn't get me on the list or something, but apparently it wasn't complete yet. So. Okay. Yeah, it's always nice to have the hard copy because the technology doesn't always seem to work at that meeting.
Yeah, Wi-Fi. All right. Anything else on that? Good. Julie, comments from citizens? All right. So now we need to move into the closed session. So I will do a roll call vote.
That's gonna make a motion first.
Oh, sorry. Motion to move into closed session.
So moved.
Thank you. Brian.
Second.
Second, Jane. All right, roll call vote. Larry?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Ashley?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Bren?
Yes.
Jeannie?
Yes.
All right, we will be into closed session.
We'll go in the library.
Musab, Dylan, thank you very much.
Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Assume you don't need a